Have you ever seen someone paint skin that looks just so beautiful and succulent and just juicy? I'm talking skin that looks like this, or this, or this. It's that blue Satan, Ruby Colette, Hey Mary Jean, Tao ZP type aesthetic. In today's video, I want to explore that technique a little bit and break it down into 4 key components that will help us paint really beautiful nuanced skin by the end of this that looks beautiful and believable, but also really stylized and, for the lack of a better term, juicy. It took me a little bit of time to figure this one out, so I'm gonna warn you now, this video might be a bit of a big boy. So grab a snack and strap in. If you guys enjoyed this video and learned something today, please remember to like and subscribe. Comment down below what you think of this technique of painting skin, and come say hello on IG, Discord, and Patreon. All of the links are down in the description below. But yeah, whenever you're ready, let's paint some juicy, juicy skin. For today's painting, I wanted something fairly close up, a classic portrait, because we need to be able to see a lot of skin. I was scrolling through Pinterest and saw this photo, and my instant reaction was vampire fangs. So that is the character that we're working with. I once again started in my sketchbook because I just think better on paper, and I imported the sketch in to clean it up. I wanted her to have dreads and a half-up hairstyle like the Baron. If you know, you know. And I've been really drawn to more loudly expressive faces lately, as opposed to the quieter expressions that I usually paint. In terms of the color palette, I knew right from the get-go that I wanted her to have these deep wine red lips and like a berry tone on the cheek, as well as some blues in the background. So to make it split complementary, we're gonna give her some bright yellow hair. I feel like this painting had me consciously invested right from the get-go, which is good because I didn't want to just zone out and paint the skin like I always do. When it comes to painting that beautiful, plump, dreamy looking skin, I figured out a way to break it down to 4 simple aspects. And now that we have our initial block-ins done, let's go ahead and get right into the tutorial. So here's a painting by Olivia A. Duquienne. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but you probably know her better as Tao ZP. The very first thing I'm sure you notice is how smooth and blended the skin looks, while still holding dimension and structure, by the way. So we need to blend, but not overblend. And the key, I realized, was to blend everything but the shadows. In fact, throughout this video, I want you to think of the rule of 3. Each aspect we speak about today is going to be in a 1:2 ratio. In this case, we blend out 2 out of the 3 value groups, namely the highlights and midtones, and we leave the third, the shadows, unblended. So to start, with a dark shadow tone blocked in, I grabbed an airbrush and a fairly desaturated flesh tone and started to paint in some high planes on the face. Remember, we're blending the highlights and midtones into each other, so feel free to go all the way with the airbrush and a soft round blender. For this piece, I wanted the light to hit from above our character's face, so we're going to place the bright tones on the tops of the cheeks, the center of the forehead, and the planes of the nose that face upwards. This first step was probably my least favorite of all, purely because it involves so much soft blending. We are not worrying about the actual hues just yet, only focusing on the values, but even just this far in, I was honestly kind of starting to worry that it wouldn't work. Also, this has just been an emotional roller coaster of a week, so my brain has been catastrophizing anyway, and I was definitely convinced it would all go wrong and we wouldn't have a video at all. You know, just the usual girly pop things. And as you can tell, it is starting to enter muddy, undefined territory with all this extreme softness, so let's now try to introduce a bit of dimension into the rendering. With a hard edge round brush, I grabbed the shadow tone from the flat color underneath and started to gently introduce a little bit of shadow. Now remember, just because we're painting shadows doesn't mean they have to be extremely dark. Shadows need to look like the dark side of the skin, not the dark side of the moon. And also, because the skin needs to still look incredibly smooth, we don't want like super harsh lines in the face. So what I learned was to think of hard and soft edges as a difference in value as opposed to a literal harsh line. And that is when it clicked for me just how these artists are able to show definition without any actual visible hard edges. It is in how harsh the value changes are. So in that space in the lower half of the cheek, although we don't necessarily see any literal hard edges, there is still very visible dimension because the hard edge lies in the value separation between the brighter and darker areas of the cheek. So now with our values all in place, let's think about color. Okay, now that we have what looks like a head made of clay, let's breathe some life into our girl. I went ahead and painted some of the rest of the elements off screen just because it's not part of the tutorial. Now look at this painting by Julia Razumova, whom we did a whole style study on, by the way. It was awesome. But look at this painting in terms of temperature and saturation. Notice how the most saturated tones are in the middle third of the face, in the nose and the apples of the cheek. Also in the eyes and mouth, though those are a little less intense. But if you look at the jaw and the forehead, you'll see that not only are the colors significantly less saturated, they are also significantly cooler toned. So our next step is to grab the airbrush and make a new layer over the skin that we've painted. I set this one to color blending mode, although I did eventually also use overlay and soft light, I think. But for now, I grabbed some warm reds and some cooler grays and started to add in the color variations that we saw in Julia's work right now. Because we've set this layer to color, what it will do is simply add color to the layer underneath, not mess with the values at all. Do you guys ever just look at your painting process and think, man, I am spoiled? Because there are amazing artists out there who paint traditionally and don't do all this blending mode stuff, and their art comes out looking way better than anything you and I have created. I don't know, sometimes I feel like our collective artistic ancestors judge me for using digital painting tools. Anyway, so I focused all of the warm, saturated tones at the apples of her cheek, the tip of her nose, the eyes, and the mouth. And I put the greyest, most cool looking tones at the tops of her cheeks, right under each eye, at the space between the two eyebrows, and directly under the apples of the cheek where the jaw is. Now, the colors are really starting to make sense, but I did end up flattening that layer down because, again, we need to think about the smoothness. I think the other thing with this style is to never lose sight of one aspect of the skin when you're working on another one. So even though we've just worked on the color, we need to go back and fix texture issues as well, i.e. any harsh lines and shadows that have shown up where they don't belong. I also went in at this stage and refined a lot of the little details like the eyebrows, the lashes, the edges of the nose and such, but again, remembering to blend within the highlights and midtones. I had to switch to Photoshop really quick just to grab the liquify filter and fix her ponytail, which was just a little too far up from her head for my liking. Yes, Critter has liquify, but the brush for that only goes up to 1000 pixels, and I paint at 8192 pixels, so it is just not big enough. At this stage, I went ahead and played with the contrast a little more. I wanted her to really pop out of the background, so I darkened and desaturated the background layer as well. And now we're ready to dive into the subtler aspects of painting skin in this way. Look at this piece by Mazia Palomba, aka Hey Mary Jean. Notice how the specular highlights are so beautifully textured, and in having textured highlights, Mazia has kind of made the rest of the skin on Bubbles' face look even smoother. The contrast of that textured specular highlight really enhances the softness of the skin around it. So what we're going to do next is grab a textured brush and a bright highlight tone. I don't know about you, but adding the specular highlights is honestly one of my absolute favorite parts of painting portraits. And the trick is to place these highlights on the darker elements of the face. That way they really pop because of that contrast in the values. So I stuck them around the eyes and on the darkest part of the nose bulb, and of course in the lip to add some gloss. For the cheekbone, I felt like I wanted a more gritty, chunky texture, so I ended up testing a few brushes out, and then I stumbled upon this beauty. This is a rainbow glitter brush from the Rakuri brush set, which I will link down below. It's a free download. But what it does is, as the name suggests, add glitter that shifts hue, so it creates like a rainbow effect. I love this look. I love anything holographic or rainbowy. It just makes me so irrationally happy. So of course, I also took it to the eyelid highlight as well. The great thing about this brush is that it is a scatter glitter brush, meaning it is inherently gonna add texture, and so it automatically helps our purpose, which is to use this texture to make the rest of the skin look softer. Oh man, I love this look so much. Now I kind of want to see if they make holographic highlighters for your face. If you guys know any, let me know in the comments below. So here's a painting by Ruby Colette that just looks so ethereal and otherworldly. The skin basically looks like porcelain, but there is a tiny detail I want you guys to notice here: the hard edge defining lines. You'll see these around the nostrils, in the eyelids, under the jaw, and around the face as a whole. To my mind, this almost feels like the shadow equivalent of the textured highlights that we've just created. These little lines then form the second of our 1:2 ratio, where the one is super smooth skin and it is sandwiched between the two textured value extremes. I hope that makes sense. So coming back to our painting, I grabbed a hard edge brush and first outlined the nostrils and nose bulb. Then I went in and outlined the silhouette of the face as well as the jaw. We're basically adding the hard definition back in that we had blended out earlier, but in a more subtle, controlled, minimal way. I went about doing these lines everywhere I thought we could use a bit of definition and also a bit of texture. You guys don't even know the amount of restraint I had to cultivate in myself not to just go full line art and to keep it all subtle and understated. It was a lot. As an entire process, this was definitely some of the most consciously involved paintings that I've done, at least for something as simple as a basic one-person portrait. Like when I'm painting normally, it gets to a stage where I can simply zone out and rely on my muscle memory to do the rendering. But with this technique of painting skin, I feel like my brain had to be awake and present for every single step of it. Now, this could just be because it is a new workflow and it isn't in my muscle memory quite yet, but it was definitely a lot of brain work. I had to take lots of breaks when my mind got tired and cranky, so I took loads and loads of little breaks and did this painting in short increments. But like, look at the end result. Who wouldn't want to invest that much time if it comes out looking like this, right? Though I suppose the thing to ponder about is whether this is a sustainable way of painting skin. But in either case, I love the end product and I can't wait to hear what you think. So here's the finished painting, Immortal. So there we go. This looks so much better and significantly more nuanced than how I usually paint skin. But I feel like the question is this an efficient way to paint faces? Are the beautiful end results worth the extra significant amount of painting time and conscious effort that goes into this? Let me know what you think in the comments below, because I still don't know what to do with this technique. Also next week, I'm considering doing a video on how to paint juicy hair, kind of like you see here or here. Let me know if that's something you guys are into, and I'll put that video together, so comment below. And since you're down there, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to give it a big thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel out so much. Oh, and if you want to grab all of the art rewards that I put up every single week, as well as my custom extended brush pack with over 60 brushes for Photoshop and Critter, you can check out my Patreon. I'll leave a link up here in the cards. You can grab the brushes as part of your Patreon rewards, or you can grab them separately from the shop. It's all up here. Check out the cards up here. Alrighty, you guys, that's about all I have to say today. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. If you're currently working on a painting and aren't sure how to finish it up, check out this video in the outro down here. Where I shared some tips on how I finish all of my paintings, and I promise you they will really make your life a lot easier. So make sure you check that out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye!